effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking, and they are very important so that we can all hear what we're saying to each other. Please only speak when invited by the chairman, that's myself. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name so that we're all clear. Please mute your microphone when you're not talking so we don't hear cups of tea and dogs barking, etc. After each party has made their representation, the chairman, that's myself, will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please type RTS, that's request to speak, in the instant message conversation panel on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. We all know where that is, I think, and click to arrow to send. Please note this panel is visible to all parties, so everybody can see that. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. So if we're all clear on that, we will now move on to the second part, which is apologies. And I will ask the clerk if there are any apologies for the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Parish has sent his apologies and Councillor Decent is attending as a substitute councillor.
Right, well, you're very welcome, Councillor Decent, and thank you very much for stepping in at such short notice. As our reserve, we're extremely grateful. So I'll now ask, with regard to declarations of interest, I will each ask subcommittee member in turn if they have any declarations of interest. Firstly, I'll ask alphabetically, Councillor Dion, do you have any declarations of interest?
No.
Thank you. And Councillor Decent, do you have any declarations of interest?
No.
Okay, so there are none recorded, thank you, and I neither have any declarations of interest myself as chair. We'll now go on to protocol for public speaking. Please note that a revised protocol for virtual meeting has been circulated with the agenda sheet, so you will be aware of those. And I will turn my phone off. I do apologise. I have been hoisted by my own petard. Right, turn the sound down. Right. Okay, so we will now go on to the meeting itself. Full variation of premises licence for the More the Merrier, 68 Kimberley Road, Bournemouth. I will ask each participant to introduce themselves and state their role. I will introduce myself first. I am a member for Creekmore Ward in BCP, and my name is Councillor Mrs. Judy Butt. I will now ask Councillor Dion to introduce himself, please.
I am Councillor Brian Dion. I am a councillor in Penn Hill.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dion. And now I will ask Councillor Decent to introduce himself, please.
I'm Councillor Norman Decent, and I am the ward councillor for Kinston and West Howe.
And I will now ask Linda Cole, who is our legal advisor for the subcommittee. Linda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, it's Linda Cole, the solicitor advising the subcommittee today.
Okay, and now I'd like to ask Nikki Hooley, please.
Hello, Nikki Hooley, Democratic Services Officer and Clerk for today's meeting.
Thank you, and Michelle Fletcher.
Thank you, Councillor. Michelle Fletcher from the Licensing Department.
And David Ramsey. Are you there, David?
Sorry. David Ramsey, the licensing consultant representing Mr. Gunders, the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. And Mr. Gunders, are you there?
Oh, hi there. I'm Mr. Gunders, Ishmael Gunders. I'm the DPS from the Mordham area.
Thank you very much. And Louise Busfield and Sergeant Gareth Gosling, if you're there, with regard from Dorset Police, although I understand you're probably phoning in later.
No, we're here.
Yeah, right. Very good morning to you. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Gareth Gosling and Louise Busfield here from Dorset Police.
Okay, thank you. And in addition, Democratic Services officers are providing technical support to the meeting, but will not take any part in the particular meeting. So before I run through the procedure, may I check that everybody who's given notice of their intention to speak has been identified? Is there anybody who I have not identified, please? If so, speak up. No? Okay. So I'll take that as correct. So I'm going to move on to the next item on the meeting. I'll now explain the proposed procedure and order of speaking for the hearing, and it is as follows. Item 1, the licensing officer will present their report. The applicant will then make their application. Questions of the applicant by all parties will then ensue, and the members of the committee will take questions first. The responsible authorities and other persons will make their representations, that's the police in this case. The questions of the responsible authorities and other persons will then be put, and members of the committee will speak first. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. So the police will speak first and then the applicant last. The hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with the legal advisor and clerk present. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held, in accordance with the regulations. The notification of the decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I will now ask all parties to confirm agreement on the proposed procedure of making their representations. Little note there. Right, I've noted that. Okay, so I would ask first, please, Michelle Fletcher, would you like to confirm agreement to the proposed procedure and make your representation?
I confirm. Sorry, Councillor, could you confirm? Would you like me to start with my report?
I'm just asking whether I will just ask that you're all happy that we go in this order. It'll be Michelle Fletcher, Mr. David.
Yes, I confirm. I'm happy.
Yes. So then, Mr. David Ramsey, do you confirm?
Yes, I'm happy.
Thank you, Mr. Ismail Gundus.
Yes, I'm happy as well.
Gundus, thank you. And Louise Busfield and Sergeant Gareth Gosling. Are we all happy?
Yes.
Can you confirm? Thank you very much.
Happy with that.
Thank you. And finally, may I please remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on their written representation. So we don't want any repeat, please. All questions are to be asked through me, the chairman, and there'll be no cross-examinations of parties. So one party cannot ask a question of another. So if we're all content, I'm hearing buzzing. Have we all got our mics mute? We have. I'll now ask the licensing officer to present the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. The application before you was made by David Ramsey on behalf of Mr. Gunzas on the 26th of May for a variation of the premises licence at More the Merrier, 68 Kimberley Road, Bournemouth. The application is requesting the removal of condition 2.11 as it is currently preventing the owner of the premises, Mr. Oxus, from being named on the licence. The application's prompted response from Dorset Police, as they've previously reviewed the premises licence on 2 occasions, mainly as the licensing objectives, the prevention of crime and disorder, and the protection of children from harm were not being upheld. These comments are attached on my report, see appendices 4, 5 and 6. The application has prompted no further comments from the other responsible authorities. I can confirm that Mr. Oxus was reissued a personal licence in 2020, February of this year. Members are reminded that any powers exercised by them must be necessary and appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and directed at the causes of concern for the application identifies. I do apologise. I think someone's had an accident next door. There's a lot of disturbance. Sorry. If you've got any further questions, please don't hesitate in asking.
Okay, thank you for that. We've all read the report from the licensing officer, which, can everybody hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Thank you, yes. Yeah. You will have all read the report from the licensing officer, which outlines all the specific details and the history of the matter. Are there any points of clarification or fact that anybody would like to ask with regards to the report? I'm not seeing any RTSs, so I'm taking that as a no. Okay, so I would now ask the applicant, please, to make their application. So, Mr. David Ramsey, I understand you're speaking on behalf of Mr. Gundus. So, if you'd like to make your application, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Gundus, the premises licence holder, and Mr. Oxus the shop owner and the subject of the condition, are obviously disappointed with the police representation, especially the witness statement that was emailed to me less than 24 hours ago before this hearing. Mr Ox's, his staff and his family have worked hard over the past 12 years to ensure that the problems that led to this condition being added to the licence in 2008 would not happen again. With regards to the initial police representation that led to this hearing, we would question the following. We agree that the subcommittee stated that Mr Oxus should have known the details of and conditions of his licence, but would also comment that on allowing the premises licence to continue in October 2019, the subcommittee accepted that Mr Oxus was the victim of poor advice from his legal representative. Mr Oxus did, however, concede that he should understand the terms of his premises licence and has lived to regret this shortcoming. Again, at October 2019 hearing, the removal of the condition 2.11 was never an issue, and its removal was not requested by Mr Oxus during the hearing. Hence, there is no mention of this in the decision notice that was issued. To ensure that all 4 licensing objectives were being met, Mr Oxus went to great expense when requesting me to carry out an inspection and assessment of his operation at More the Merrier, and as a result, recommendations were made. Members of the subcommittee, all the additional conditions mentioned by the police in the representation were offered by Mr Oxus as a result of the assessment, and no further additional conditions were felt necessary by the subcommittee. It is to be noted that during the October hearing, Dorset Police stated that these conditions, if these conditions were adhered to, they would have no further conditions, no further concerns regards the running of the premises. During the hearing, Mr Oxus was asked several questions regards the licensing objectives and satisfied the subcommittee with all of his answers. To my knowledge and that of the premises licence holder and Mr Oxus, there were no concerns re the running of this premises in relation to the licensing objectives since then. However, we now have a witness statement from a resident in Stamford Road, an extremely long road that runs from Paisley Road in the south to Cranley Road in the north. It is extremely disappointing that the statement was produced less than 24 hours prior to the hearing, when the allegations made in the statement cover incidents the witness claims happened up to 6 months before. Both Mr Oxus and the premises licence holder, Mr Gunders, are extremely upset and angry that these allegations and strenuously deny them. They are both willing to speak, if required, on these allegations. If I can draw your attention to paragraphs 2 and 3 statements, if you do have the statement at hand. At the October 2019 hearing, the purchase and sale of items bought from large retail stores were discussed at length, and that explanations were given by Mr Oxus regards the purchase. It was clearly highlighted that many items are considerably cheaper in these stores than in the cash and carry. I, for one, can vouch for this, having often bought supermarket items after checking the prices. It is entirely within the law to make these purchases and sell them in your store. For the witness to make accusations of theft is extremely concerning, and it appears to be without any substance. I was also bring to the subcommittee's attention that the day after the October hearing, review hearing, when the subcommittee accepted the explanations regards the supermarket products, Mr Oxus informed me that a search warrant was executed by the police and a thorough search made of the shop and storerooms. My client informed me that nothing untoward was found in either the shop or the storerooms. This was an extremely stressful and upsetting for Mr Oxus and his family, who believe that they have adequately explained the circumstances of the produce they sell in the shop. If we move to paragraph 4 and 5 of the statement, It insinuates that the applicant's store is or could be responsible for, and I quote, males with gaunt appearance and riding cycles frequently in the area. This is extremely far-fetched and, again, without any substance whatsoever. I personally am aware from my previous police career that this area, like many others, accommodate a wide variety of residents, including, I'm quite sure, some males of gaunt appearance riding cycles, and also those unfortunate enough to suffer from addiction. Items 7, 8 and 9 of the witness statement are extremely serious allegations that Mr Ogsus and Mr Gunders strenuously deny ever happening, and they, if called on, are happy to confirm this personally today. Neither can give any reason as to why this witness would make such accusations of stolen property being accepted or sold in the shop. The owner is extremely upset that once again, after a hearing and a negative search warrant, there is suspicion being placed upon himself and his staff from accusations that are totally untrue. Finally, with reference to paragraphs 10 and 11, my client is careful to ensure that no produce marked not for individual sale is sold separately. There are many in the past, there may have been in the past produce sold that had best before labels. This, however, I'm sure you're aware, is legal to do so. With regards to the alleged deterioration in standards, I can confirm that Mr Ogsus and his staff have striven to follow the instructions and advice given as a result of my examination and assessment into the 4 licensing objectives. And to my client's knowledge, until this witness statement was produced yesterday, no concerns have been raised by the police or the licensing authority. Moving on from this witness statement, members of the subcommittee, the offence that led to revocation of Mr Ogsus' personal licence and the condition in question 12 years ago. He was eligible to apply for another personal licence in 2013, but has not applied until this year. Although he was under no obligation to do so, Mr Ogsus elected to resit the Level 2 Award for Personal Licence Holders course in order to refresh his knowledge. He passed the course comfortably and has now been granted a personal licence by BCP Council. Ironically, Mr Ogsus could legally now sell and authorise the sale of alcohol in any premises, licensed premises in England and Wales, except for the one that he owns, the one premises that he and his family rely on for their income and their home as it's attached to the premises. Mr Ogsus lives to regret his actions of 12 years ago and have led to the problems and great expense he and his family and his business have suffered in recent years. We do feel that the reasons given by Dorset Police's objection are both inaccurate and in its content and rather unfair, given the efforts Mr Ogsus has gone to in order to rectify his shortcomings at the review hearing in 2008. Members of the committee, we would ask you to look favourably on this application and allow Mr Ogsus to put these difficult 12 years behind him and allow him to again sell and authorise the sale of alcohol at his premises by removing this condition. Thank you.
Linda, are you there? Can you hear me? Linda, I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry.
I'd like to ask a question, if I may, with regard to a point of law. May I put that? Thank you. Mr Ramsey has alluded to the statement from the witness, the recent statement made on the 16th of the 7th, 2020. And in there are a lot of allegations and a lot of things said. I would like to be advised, please, as I'm sure the rest of the subcommittee would, as to what parts of this can be taken in strain and what parts of these can be set aside. Because some of it does seem to have some relevance and some of it seems to have no relevance whatsoever. So I'd be very grateful if we could be advised with regard to that.
Of course, yeah. When I saw the statement come in yesterday, or come to me, I did have a look through the statement as to whether it was an extra rep as such, because obviously we couldn't have had a new rep made yesterday. And I took the view when looking at the whole pack of papers that you're considering today, the information raised in it was very similar to the information connected to the review hearing that came before the licensing committee at the end of 2019. So my view, I look back at the rep made by Dorset Police in respect to this hearing, and I did note that the rep Dorset Police made at that point was that they wanted the decision today to be in the hands of the licensing committee because the matter had only been to review. So because there was reference to the review in their rep, I looked back, as I said, at the review papers, and my opinion, looking at it briefly yesterday, was that what was raised in it was very similar to what had been raised in the review hearing and the application for review.
Thank you.
So I just took it as it was all similar. So we weren't extending, and which is why I said to Democratic Services to allow the papers to stay in, just allow the statement to stay in. But you'll hear from the police in a minute, and it'd be for them then to explain to you why they think there's a connection with it and why they think it's still relevant, and then that's a view for you all to take.
Thank you very much, Linda. That's very, very helpful indeed. So bearing that in mind then, members of the subcommittee, are there any questions that you'd like to raise with the applicant's rep? Thank you.
No questions at the moment.
No.
Councillor Dion, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, and Councillor Dees, do you have any questions?
No questions at this moment. Thank you.
I have a question for the applicant with regard to the period of time that the continuance of the provision of alcohol and selling alcohol, and also authorising the sale of alcohol. Was that from the period with regard to the hearing, which was in 2019, the period being from 2008 to 2019, where it was upheld that the provision of alcohol and the authorisation of the sale of alcohol had been going on for that period? Could we have that clarified, please?
Yes, the condition was added to prevent Mr. Oxus from supplying selling alcohol or allowing the sale of alcohol at his premises. There was no change to the actual sale of alcohol from the premises. It was just simply for Mr. Oxus, he was not allowed to sell alcohol or authorise the sale of alcohol.
And that was, can you clarify the year, please?
That was in 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
And that continued then until 2019, when it was stated that the sale and authorisation of sale of alcohol had actually continued since 2008 with regard to the second review. Could I have that clarified, please?
No, the condition has remained until now.
Yes, the condition has remained, but in the statement from the police, it said the reason for the review for 2019 was because although the condition was in place, that condition had indeed been breached from 2008 to 2019.
Yeah, it was explained at length at the review hearing in October 2019 that Mr. Oxus, the solicitor that represented him, hadn't fully made him aware of all the conditions on the licence. And that was explained and it was accepted to a certain extent by the subcommittee at the last hearing, review hearing in 2019.
I see. Right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So if committee members don't have any questions, are there any other questions from officers that would like to be raised with regard to the applicant? Nothing? Okay. So I'd like now, I believe we have a phone call in train to speak to the responsible authorities to make their representations. Richard, can you advise, please? Or Max?
Or Gareth Gosling, I'm here.
Hello, Gareth. Hello, Gareth. Would you now like to make your representation, please, Sergeant Gosling? Thank you.
Yes, I will. I'll try and be brief. So this premises has, as Mr. Ramsey has alluded, been focused for our attention for a number of years. There have been periods of no activity. Some activity comes up, and the premise has been subject to 2 hearings to date. It was felt by myself that given that this condition was as a result of a hearing, albeit that it was some time ago, that it was right to bring it before the subcommittee to determine whether it would continue to be appropriate. Now, within that time, we have had, as Mr. Ramsey has alluded to, we have had a number of reasons to visit the premises, both for regular reviews of premises that have come to our attention, but also as a result of intelligence-led operations, such as the occasion when there was a number of officers that attended. It wasn't actually led by Dorset Police, it was led by HMRC, and that was indeed a negative result on that occasion. Now, the premises continues to come to our attention. The MPT raised concerns around antisocial behaviour in the area on occasion, and we obviously have had this very recent information that's come through from a concerned resident, which I think highlights really the need to tread with caution. We're certainly going to continue to review the premises frequently, as far as making sure that we conduct frequent visits and work with our neighbourhood policing teams in the community to gather any intelligence, much like we do with several other premises throughout Dorset. But I guess really it's my concern is that the premises isn't being managed effectively. There are these concerns around potentially stolen items being sold there, and whilst I accept Mr. Ramsey's view around the items from supermarkets being sold, because I am aware of that being the case elsewhere, I think the particularly pertinent issue there is that on visiting the shop, which I have done several times, there are frequently very small numbers of that product. So I would expect that, if there was a particularly good deal available from a leading supermarket, then perhaps Mr. Oxus, or indeed anyone else purchasing the product on behalf of the store, might think to buy more. But there seems to be frequently, when we visit, 1 or 2 items at most of many of the product lines. So I don't really have anything else to add other than that, other than to really hand it to the subcommittee to be satisfied that allowing Mr. Oxus to be able to be responsible for the sale of alcohol once again is something that you're happy with. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. I will ask the members of the subcommittee if they have any questions for you. I'll ask in turn. Councillor Dion, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Decent, do you have any questions?
No questions at the moment, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gosling, I do have a question, and it is really reverts back to my previous question, which I also put to the applicant, with regards to between the years 2008 to 2019 up to the second review. It was put that it was believed that the condition in fact being breached, and that the sale of alcohol and the authorisation of the sale of alcohol by Mr. how do you pronounce the name? Sorry, Oxus had indeed gone forward, and I was wondering whether you could clarify that that was the case.
Yes, I mean, from my understanding, again, we've had lengthy conversations with Mr. Ramsey and Mr. Oxus on this subject, and whilst I accept that, I've got nothing against the view that Mr. Oxus was provided with ill-informed advice, or perhaps hadn't understood the advice that was provided to him. It doesn't take away from the fact that during that time, it would seem that that particular license condition had been frequently breached, and that Mr. Oxus had continued to sell alcohol from the store. So yeah, that's. I think it was accepted at the time that it was due to ill-informed advice, and we've got nothing to the contrary to suggest that. But we do know that condition was breached. Yes.
Okay, that condition was breached. Thank you for that clarification. And the other point of clarification is that, in fact, it's only been 9 months since 6 months since the last review. And the reason I believe for you bringing your review is that your wording is, in the opinion of the Dorset Police, was that any such variation application should be put before the licensing subcommittee, as the review hearing has only just taken place. So it's the shortness of length of period that is your concern, that there hasn't been enough time since November 2019 for Mr. Oxus to prove his worth, so to speak. Is that the interpretation which perhaps the subcommittee should be taking? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, that is the case. And I think with the fact that we do continue to get occasional reports from the neighbourhood policing team with regards to antisocial behaviour in the area, and of course this most recent statement, and I do apologise for the lateness of the statement. Unfortunately, there were personal issues with the person who provided the statement, which has led to the delay in it being issued to you. But yeah, that can be helped, unfortunately. But it remains a premises of concern to us, and I think we just need to tread carefully with any changes. And I would be grateful for the overview, or the oversight, if you like, of the subcommittee in being satisfied in any changes to the licence.
Okay. Thank you for that. Just lastly, is there anything in the statement from the witness statement made on the 16th of the 7th of this year that you would like the subcommittee to be particularly alluded to? Is there anything in here which is of particular relevance? Some of it is not relevant, and we really can't take a lot of it on board, but is there anything in there which you feel is relevant and you would want us to be very mindful of?
I think really when it comes to the, like you said, there are aspects of what's written in there that can't be proven to a criminal standard. However, hopefully it does paint a bit of a picture that we do still continue to experience some concerns. I'm particularly concerned around the prospect of there being goods being purchased which are stolen. Obviously, we can't substantiate that, but nonetheless, it's something that's been brought to our attention. So we've documented it at this time, and our intention is to develop that further, to conduct further visits, and ask our neighbourhood policing team to be alert to any further signs of that activity.
Okay. Thank you for that, Sergeant Gosling. Just to go back to subcommittee members, are there any questions that you might like to ask now? Councillor Dion?
No questions.
Okay. And Councillor Decent?
No questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions then from officers with regard to factor confirmation, please? There aren't? Okay. It's funny when you get a silence back. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Sergeant Gosling. So we will now go on to...
Councillor Butt, can I just ask something, please?
Who is this, sorry?
It's Linda Cole.
Yes, of course you may, Linda, of course.
Thank you. Sergeant Gosling, can you just give us some clarity about underage sales? Has there been any concerns about underage sales?
No, we've not received any information regarding underage sales at the premises.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. You shot my fox there, but yes, that was a very relevant question. Thank you for that. So no further questions then. We'll now go on to the summing up, and the party who spoke last will go first, as is the norm. So, Sergeant Gosling, you have your period now for summing up, if you'd like to go ahead.
So I don't have a great deal else to add, having, I think, sort of briefly touched on our concerns. I think it's very pertinent that the premises remains of concern to us. And like I said earlier, I think it would just be useful. I'd feel far more confident having the oversight of the committee in determining whether it's appropriate to make any significant changes at this stage, given the fact that the premises remains very firmly on our radar. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Gosling. And Mr. Ramsey, on behalf of the applicant, you have your opportunity now to summarise. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My client, the owner, Mr. Ogsis, have worked tirelessly to ensure that More the Merrier operates to a high standard in relation to the 4 licensing objectives. Mr. Ogsis, the owner and subject of the condition in question, is still being punished for a misdemeanour that happened 12 years ago. He has voluntarily repeated his APLH exam and now once again has obtained his personal licence. In my view, Mr. Ogsis being allowed to operate fully in the shop would help towards the standards, keeping the standards there, as he has it's his own business and also his home. So he would make sure that operated to high standards. We ask that you look favourably on this application, and as I said before, to allow him to sell and authorise the sale of alcohol and put the last 12 years behind him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. So I'd just like to ask, please, all parties present, that everybody feels that they've had the opportunity to say what they want and when they want, and nobody has felt that they haven't been able to speak and be clear in what they would like to say at this hearing. Could I just have, if everybody is happy with that, I'll expect a silence. If people aren't, then would they like to speak now? That you are all content with the way in which the hearing has been taken and that everybody's had an opportunity to speak. And I have no messages and I have no noise. Right, thank you very much for that.
I believe that Mr. Ogsis may wish to comment on the witness statement, if that's possible.
It was to ask if you were happy in the way in which the process had taken place rather than any content. We've dealt with the content, I think, now, Mr. Ramsey. I'll be advised by Linda Cole. Please, Linda, if I may, with regard to that. Are you there?
It's a matter for you, Chair. I mean, yes, we had passed that stage, but if you want to hear from Mr. Ogsis, that's fine.
Mr. Ogsis, I will hear you briefly, please, but please don't repeat anything. Make sure that it is based on what has already been said in the statement. Thank you.
Yes, I'll be talking on behalf of Mr. Ogsis. It's Ishmael Gunders, the DPS of this premises. Regarding the statement, we do have all sorts of issues in this sort of businesses, as you guys are probably aware of. We deal with all sorts of people that likes us, people that doesn't like the way we run business and stuff. So we do have people against us. So we can get some sort of a false statement against us, which is a coincidence that we get it before the hearing. And another thing is with the antisocial behaviours around the shop and stuff. As we all are aware, Bournemouth itself has a major problem with homeless people, with crackheads, with all sorts of stolen goods around. So this is an issue for everybody in this community, not just for us. So police has got limited things to do against this. While they've got limited things to do, we could only do so much to stop all this around us, which we do as much as we can. And plus people around here, the community that lives around here has no objections, they haven't had any objection about anything. It's one person that lives a little bit far from this premises which is making this statement. So we just wanted to let you guys know what we feel about this as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gundis. Linda, did you wish to speak?
No, I've got
No,
nothing to add. Thank you.
Last RTS. Okay, thank you. I'm getting used to this system. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Gundis. So with that in mind, then, I will now conclude the hearing, and the subcommittee will adjourn to deliberate in private with the legal advisor and the clerk present. The notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. I will now ask about the as appropriate. Yeah, just moving on. I will now ask the legal advisor to explain that right of appeal, please. Thank you, Linda.
Sorry. There will be a right of appeal to whatever decision that the subcommittee makes today. That will be formally notified to you in writing within 5 days of the hearing, as the chair has said, and any appeal after that must be made to Dorset Magistrates Court, and the detail about the appeal and where to make it will be contained in the decision letter.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So I will now ask that our live stream has now been concluded, and we will adjourn to prepare for the next meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, if everybody's present, I'm now going to begin the next item, which is to be heard in exempt session, which is the application for review of a premises licence, Chicken Express 144 Old Christchurch Road, Bournemouth. So in relation to the next item of business appearing today, the committee is asked to consider the following resolution: that under section 100A, subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information. So that said, if there are any public and press, I will now pause while the live stream is switched off before we progress with the further business of the meeting. Thank you, Richard.